Welcome to the final part of today's TSI prep. So part 5 is dealing with finding percentages. Okay, so what we have here is a table, and it says the table shown represents the budget of an average college student attending a community college. So number 1, it says how much of the student's budget is room and board when living off campus. What I want to do right now is just look at the table real quick and just see what's going on. So we have budget where you live at home with your parents versus living off campus at an apartment. So we have some items here. So we have tuition fees, books and supplies, room and board, transportation, personal and miscellaneous things, right? So if you were living at home with your parents, then all of these things
would total up to $12,119.
Right? But with, all of these things, right? If you were living off campus at an apartment,
then of course you would have a bigger budget. So in this case, it's $15,710.
With number 1, we're looking at 2 pieces of information here. Again, it says how much of the student's budget is room and board when living off campus, okay? So we're basically looking at room and board, and we're only focusing on the student's budget when living off campus, okay? So we have $6,806 over the total, which is $15,710. Now, I do not expect you to know what that is as a percentage, right? This is probably where the TSI says, hey, let's just use a calculator to figure this out, right? So what you would do is punch in $6,806 divided by $15,710, okay? So that is going to be, as a decimal, 0.43. Now, we don't want a decimal because it's asking us to find percentages, right? So since we have a decimal and we want to convert that, into a percent, we're going to have to move the decimal place to the right 2 times. So 1 and 2. So your answer is 43%. Okay? We have a different scenario this time. It says how much of the student's budget is room and board when living at home with parents. So we have 2 pieces of information, room and board, when living at home with parents, okay? So over here we have room and board. So it's $2,424 when living at home with parents, right? And the total here is $12,119. So of course you're going to do, 2,424 divided by 12,119. We're going to use a calculator, of course. If you punch this in, you're going to get 0.20, and we can convert that decimal into a percent, right? So we're going to move the decimal to the right 2 times. So the answer is 20%. All right, so here we go. Number 3, what is 12% of 250? So one of the key words that I want you to know is that whenever I see the word is, that just means equals in mathematics, right? Whenever I see the word of, that means multiplication. And maybe you're going to see this a lot, right? Whenever you see the word what, that could just mean my unknown, right? And how do we represent the unknown most of the time? We use the variable x. You can use y, you can use b, you can use c, you can use whatever you want, but typically we use the variable x. So I'm looking at number 3. It says, what is 12% of 250? So here's what we're going to do. All right, so that word what means x, and that word is means equal. Now we have that 12% of 250. Now I can't say 12% times 250. I mean, you could, but I think it would be easier if we convert that percent to a decimal. So let's just write 12, okay? Remember our little way of remembering what we need to do or where we need to move the decimal, right? All right, percent to decimal. So I need to start from the right and move the decimal to the left 2 times. So that is 0.12, okay? So 0.12, and then we have the word of, so that means multiplication, times 250. All right, so what you can do is write 250 times 0.12. All right, so here we go. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 5 is 10, carry the 1. So we have 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1, that's 5, okay? Now moving on to the next number, which is 1. But before we do that, we have to write a 0, all right? Hopefully you remember how to multiply. So 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 2, but we don't need this 1 anymore because that was, carried over when we were multiplying by 2. So it's just 1 times 2, right? That is just 2. And then we add. So 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. 5 plus 5 is 0. We carry the 1. So it's 1 plus 2. That's 3. Now, here's the thing. So, no decimal here, but there are 2 digits after the decimal. So, we will put a little dot here. And since we have 2 digits after the decimal, we need to move the decimal here to the left 2 times, okay? So, we have 30.00 or 30. So x equals 30. That's number 3. Simple. All right, now let's move on to number 4. What is 10% of 40? Okay, so the word what means x, is means equals, 10%. All right, hopefully we can see that we just need to move the decimal to the left 2 times, okay? So that's just going to be 0.10. The word of means multiplication, and then we have 40. So 40 times 0.10. So 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 4 is 0. Moving on to the 1, we need to write a 0 here before we do anything. So 1 times 0 is 0, and then 1 times 4 is 4, okay? 2 digits after the decimal, so 1, 2, we have 4.00 or just 4. So x equals 4. Now here we have number 5. 12 is 20% of what? So we're not starting with the word what. We have a number right off the bat. So it's just going to be 12. Is means equal. We have 20%, which is 0.20, times x. All right? So in other words, it's just 12 equals 0.20x. Now, this is just a basic algebra problem. Okay, so if I divide both sides by 0.20, okay, and then we have x equals 12 divided by 0.20. Hopefully we can use a calculator for this. That is going to be 60, okay?
All right, so that was the last problem for today. Congratulations. Hopefully you were able to understand a lot of the things that I presented through these videos. Remember, you're able to rewatch these videos anytime you need to. Make sure that you work on those IXLs and get the scores that you need. Keep the notes somewhere so that you can review when we get to the actual TSI. And yeah, hopefully you're learning a lot of the things. Hopefully you're able to understand a lot of the things. There will be more TSI prep in the future, so be on the lookout for that. All right. Okay. So yeah, just make sure that you're taking the preparation so far seriously. I know you can do it. All right.